Well, another summer blockbuster season is over. Um, Boy, what a movie I picked to close this season. Later is coming September, and September is basically kind of like my second least favorite month when it's about movies. Not much is gonna be during that season, and then of course, it is technically the calm before the storm before October, when we get more blockbuster movies. But of course, we got Halloween. You know how much I love Halloween. But anyway, this vlog is not exactly about me talking about my plans. I'm just gonna talk about the movie that I just went to see, and that is none other than The Invitation. Cause there weren't any other big giant movies that caught my attention. Although to be fair, I was a little bit interested on a movie known as The Invitation. Although a little bit inside me, I was a little bit kind of like hesitant because it's about vampires, and lately we haven't got a very good vampire movie. There's something about vampire movies that personally it kind of sucks the fun out of it. I wasn't into the Twilight movies. And let's remember that this year we had Morbius, and Morbius was a very very boring movie, and so Vampire wasn't technically kind of like my preferences when it's about monster movies. Although I did see good ones in the past, like Dracula, I saw Nosferatu, and From Dusk Till Dawn was actually really good and really entertaining. But nowadays, it looks like every time when you want to make a vampire movie, you have to make it as kind of like everyone talks like they have almost like no emotions, or it's always kind of like romanticized in one way or another. It's kind of like the typical tropes that you go into the when you go into vampire movies. And another thing that I had to that got me it got me a little bit suspicious about The Invitation is that this movie is made from the director from this awful movie called The Curse of La Llorona. I think I made a vlog out of it years ago, and I told him that it was a very, very dull movie and it wasn't very good. But now that I've seen The Invitation, congratulations, Curse of La Llorona. The Invitation is worse. That movie was really boring, and I mostly blame it on some of the storytelling decisions that they made. There was a kind of like a direction that it felt really mishandled, and most of the time I was struggling to sleep. I think I spent most of the movie just stretching my arms and my legs, trying to become as comfortable as possible. But still, the movie was probably one of the biggest chores that I had that I was trying to be comfortable to try to at least give it this movie a semblance of attention. But I did, and kind of make me try to see which was worse. What was Morbius the worst vampire movie that I've seen this year, or is The Invitation one of the worst movie I've seen this year? Because one of them was really incompetently made, but somehow it comes times that it becomes so bad it's funny. Although kind of like the joke was ruined because of Jared Leto trying to milk in on the memes. and the other one, it was just dull and boring. So it's kind of like two different kind of evils or two different kind of poisons, and you have to pick one. But at the same time, you don't want either of them. But you know that when you go into a crossroad of life, you have to take either path. And sometimes you have to see both evils in order to learn what to do and what not to do on movies. Because that's technically the kind of like the beauty of movie criticisms, that you watch it, do you see that something that you don't like, technically you have to tell the other one where it fails. So probably in the future someone can make it better. Unless someone is thick-headed and is hard to take criticisms. But anyway, this is basically my initial review of The Invitation. So what the movie is about? It's about this woman who is an artist. She's played by Natalie Emmanuel. She plays a girl named Evie. It's kind of like evening or everything, but every time they call her Evie, she kind of sounds like the Pokemon. But anyway, she's kind of like a struggling artist. She lives in New York, and she recently lost her mother, and she's kind of lonely until she decides one day to try out, all these websites that you just give them a sample of your blood and then send it to mail, and they might find you kind of like lost relatives. So she tries that, and she gets news that, oh, look at this, I got some British family that I didn't know they exist. So I found a distant cousin. So she meets with the guy, and the cousin is like, wow, I can't believe it. You're kind of like my lost cousin. So everyone wants to meet you. So come to Britain. We'll pay you for everything. And she's like, okay. She goes to Britain. She sees that her new family is in this kind of like big, lavish, Gothic mansion with the statues and all this, and all these, the typical that you see on those horror movies. And she's like, okay, this looks good. And she meets the lord of the mansion, who is this guy named Walter. He's played by Thomas Doherty. And well, she stays there, and well, let's say that she's a little bit uncomfortable with them because they're preparing for a wedding or something like that. And little that she knows is that there is something evil lurking in the mansion. And of course, I am talking about vampires. That's technically the synopsis of this movie. And as much as, even as the most basic of storytelling, the execution of the movie didn't do well. But I'll get to that, because first of all, I gotta say that, well, the acting wasn't exactly terrible, but it was kind of like just average, I'll say. And Natalie Emmanuel as her character, she does fine, I'll say. She's basically kind of like this character of color that she feels kind of like, how can I say, she lost her family, she's longing for, family bonding, and she decides that, you know what, probably there's some remnants of my family because I only knew my father and my mother. And then she kind of sees that chance, by giving her, her blood sample so they can, by DNA, they can find lost relatives. I don't know how, I know that there's things like that, and honestly, I wouldn't even try it because honestly, it's like any typical horror movie. People, they technically go with a bad idea that everyone say like, hey, I just met you for like, what was it, 30 minutes? So go to Britain, come with us. They want to meet you. And she's like, okay. that is technically a big warning sign that the character is kind of dumb. Also, okay, the character she always say that, well, whoa, that's all of a sudden, but it's still, she do it. What else I can tell about this movie? This character also has kind of like a friend that she's kind of technically well, for lack of a better word, the sassy, loudmouth black woman who she's just kind of like a little bit of a comic relief that she kind of like talking the phone and saying, hey woman, you have to be careful with white men, because especially the ones with goatees or something like that. And by the way, this never happened because nobody has a goatee, and she's just there just to say that, well, I'm just technically a man hater or something like that, especially white men. And considering that our main character is kind of like she's also black, but light color black, and she is in the middle of Britain, in which the majority of people in Britain are white. Oh my god, I'm feeling more uncomfortable talking about it, because I'm not the kind of guy who wants to distinguish people by their colors. But sometimes when a movie forces me to do it, I just have to do it. Sometimes. But still, I'm a little bit on protest. What else I can say about this movie? Some of the characters. Oh yeah, we got the cousin who is kind of there, to be kind of like the link between our protagonist and the Walter guy, and the Lord Walter, who is basically the master of the mansion. Honestly, you can tell exactly that he is a vampire, because maybe it's just me, but every time I see him, I specifically knew that he was a vampire just for the fact that he has naturally pointy ears. And I was like, that's definitely a vampire. Just because of the pointy ears. Other characters that appear are, just to go a little bit vague, but without spoiling a little bit too much, even though the movie doesn't deserve to be watched. There is these women who, one of them is a blonde one who is kind of like submissive to the other girl who is there's also a couple of maids, and the maids are basically the equivalent of the red shirts of Star Trek. They're there to become fodder for the vampires. And also we got this actor named Sean Pertwee, who is the kind of like the head butler, who has kind of like this evil eyes to our main protagonist because she's black. Funny thing, I never knew that this guy, he was also a head butler in the series of Gotham. Yeah, this guy played Alfred in the Gotham TV series. So I never knew that because I never watched Gotham. But that was technically kind of like a coincidence that we found Alfred's evil twin. And all of them are doing kind of like okay just for the script, so I don't blame them. But probably the only most likable character in this movie is this woman named played by Carol Ann Crawford, who she's kind of like this nanny who she's really sweet and very likable, I will say, in the few instances that she is. So that's basically I will tell about some of the acting. But the biggest crux that this movie has is actually the way it was filmed. Because the more you watch the movie goes on, it kind of forgets itself that it is a horror movie. Because you have all this gothic structures and everything that you feel like you're gonna watch kind of like a haunted house / monster inside a mansion movie, but it doesn't, because it feels so concentrated on making a romantic story than a monster story. I kid you not that the kind of like the 2/3 or the entire first half of the movie, it just basically just our main character, just she tries this thing on her on experimenting their DNAs in order to find out relatives around the world. She finds one and go to a trip. She finds this Walter guy. She basically falls a little bit in love with him despite some awkward moments. And they're preparing for the different parties, the aristocratic parties that they always get, and most of the time it's so concentrated on this aspect that then then you might be you say that I'm here to see vampires. Oh yeah, vampires here and there. Let's just put a scene of a maiden going to get something because they had butler say, hey, I want you to get some wine from the basement. You accompany her there, and then the women are just looking, and then basically you get a jump scare or the typical fake scares, but it'll always end up with a woman being killed by something with long fingers and long nails or something like that. And then we're back with the main character, and the main character doesn't even interact with anything that is vampire-esque or something like that. There is only one moment that is kind of close, but it's very vague, and every time when the horror moments happen, then they keep up with the romantic story in which it was like, okay, where it goes. Then there's even a moment in which we had kind of like a horror moment, and then it's briefly forgotten because they make room for a sex scene. That's how much this movie it gets uninteresting, because we as an audience, we saw the marketing, we saw the trailers, and we were invested that we were gonna see a horror movie. But it's then when things finally hit a moment in which we finally get to see, kind of like this odd banquet with everyone having masks and everything. And just the moment that when you see the trailer, sorry for the car, the moment in the trailer in which one slices the neck of a maid, this is when the movie at least finally kicks in, at least in the suspense, because at this moment, finally we get to see the how can I say, the horror moment. At this particular moment, this is when I was like, finally we are in the horror aspect in which we were invested. But unfortunately, it was a little bit too late for that, because we had invested like an hour from this 45-minute movie, waiting for to kick in on the horror aspect. But man, it just took them kind of like 5 maids in order that they disappear and nobody questions it. Because the movie kind of starts out with 5 maids. Even our main character technically be friends for like 2 minutes. Two of them. and then one gets killed, and then we see all these random maids getting killed by this mysterious thing of the vampires, and nobody questions it. Nobody questions saying, what happened to maid number 3 or maid number 4? I kid you not that the maids are even numbered. There are number maids in this movie. Oh my God! Now I'm beginning to see that even though the movie was dull, I could find something to laugh at it. Actually, there's one thing that I always look at that movie, because in the inside of that mansion, the biggest thing that actually got my attention is that a lot of the times the camera always shifts to look. Well, actually it doesn't, but it's just me. I always got distracted by this sculpture. There is a sculpture of a dragon grabbing a knight that is on the floor. But I always pay attention to it because one, I'm a big fan of dragons, and that sculpture was really good, I'll say. And I was saying that, wow, this looks really good. It's too bad that it is showcased into this boring movie. I thought in my head, because of the position of the dragon and the knight, I always had kind of like this dirty mind saying that this dragon is actually fondling this knight. Almost like the Shrek donkey and dragon thing. But lo and behold, that statue is important to the climax. That I never expected that sculpture was gonna be a chestnut gun. So, I think it is a good moment to tell you that what this movie just culminates into. I mean, like I said, our main character, she's basically kind of like this like black. I think she's Latino or something like that, or I think that is technically because our main character actually is of Latina origins, Natalie Emmanuel. But basically, I don't know. The thing is that the head butler doesn't like her because apparently her ancestor, her family, she actually ran away with another black guy, and of course she wants to rekindle with them, with those long relatives, and they treat her kind of like special in the aristocracy and all these things, and she's kind of like going back and forth trying to fit in, and then she falls in love with the Walter guy. And then, but of course, she feels scared that ominous things are happening. Like she's seeing like these long clawed creatures, or I think that one of the moments that she actually said that she had enough is one of the women she cut herself with a finger, and one of the ladies she kind of sucked it like they're like delicious or something like that. And of course she decided to give it one more chance when she almost had enough about it. And then we got, the mask party in which they have this food that it's almost like a more elegant Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner scene. And then you see the trailer. She slices the throat off of one of the maids, and she's like, "What the hell? You guys are monsters." Well, we're vampires, and in order to keep our mortality, our strength, and everything, I need at least to be something like he needs to be wed with three women. Two of the women who actually are into him, and of course they needed our protagonist so she can be kind of like the third wheel, because previously there was another woman who is basically her I think it was her late grandmother, who she said that she wanted no part of it. Although honestly, living forever, and having strength, it didn't exactly told that it was technically a bad deal. Okay, the bad deal is that you're gonna live an eternity being dependent on killing other humans, which is of course is a monstrous thing. But it didn't feel like it was technically kind of like the biggest bad deal in it. So then we got kind of like this chase scene, and there's kind of like there's a few choreography moments that it was pretty basic, but still, the movie got lost me and all these things. So yeah, then what can I say? We got, of course, the moment in which she's almost forced to be wed, but she made one of the stupidest things that this thing could have backfired a lot, in which she basically pretends that she's gonna marry the Walter guy, and they make the exchange of blood transfusion because she drinks his blood. She turns into a vampire, but then she still fights him. This plan could have gone wrong. I mean, she drinks the vampire blood, and this could mean that she could have been mentally bound to the curse. But no, apparently she remembered her mother's words, in which saying that you're stronger than you could ever think of, or something like that. My God. And we got choreography with bad CGI fire and all these things, and it all culminated, with our main character killing most of the main bad guys, even the Walter guy, with very, very underwhelming choreography and all these things. And guess what? The movie ends in which some of the vampires, even the cousin, they escape. And then we get kind of like the cousin is just going around trying to find their main character. But our main character returns with her best friend, and apparently they form between a duo and to become vampire hunters apparently. And no, kid you not, it ends with a pun in which our main character just walks with her friend with a baseball bat, and she's like, why do you have a baseball bat? Well, they're a vampire and they're a bat, so I'm gonna give them the baseball bat. At the end. So if you want a movie that is kind of like a mixture between Dracula, Crimson Peak, and that was another boring movie, and of course a little bit of Get Out, you're cordially invited to watch this movie. But trust me, guys, this was such a boring long movie that it was not worth the invitation.